Hello friends! Need some pointers on building user interfaces in Godot? Follow along with these videos as we build a title screen. This is a free preview of a course on how to use control nodes in Godot. In the previous lesson, we added a title to our title screen. In this lesson, we'll add a background image. I found this image that I think suits my game idea nicely on freepik.com, made by Upcliac. Make sure you check the attribution requirements and licensing of assets you find online before you use them. I've downloaded this image and will import it into Godot so I can use it as my title screen's background. To prevent my project resource folder from getting too cluttered and disorganized, I'll create a folder for imported assets. Then inside that folder, create another for fonts. Then drag each file into the appropriate folder so I know where to find them. To draw this texture, we'll need to add a new child node to our scene. The node we need to use to draw images on screen is the texture Rect node. Let's rename this node Background. Then populate its texture property with the imported image. We can no longer see the title, the image is being drawn over it. By default, each node in the scene tree is drawn from top to bottom. So the title is being drawn first, then the background is being drawn over it. We can rearrange our nodes easily by dragging them. So the background is sorted above the title in the scene tree. This way the title is drawn over the background. This image is much larger than the display area for our game. We want the background image to cover the entire display, so we'll change its anchor presets to full rect. This moves the image to be centered within the 4 anchors, but it is still too large. If we change the expand mode of the texture rect node, we can tell it to ignore the size of the texture and instead use the size that is specified by the anchors. Now the image covers the entire display area even though the aspect ratio of the image does not match the aspect ratio of the display area exactly. It's hard to tell with this image, but it is now distorted, being stretched vertically. Other options exist to force the image to resize to fit the width, ignoring the image's height, suitable for fitting into a horizontal arrangement, or fitting the height, ignoring the image's width, better to fit inside of a vertical arrangement. Either of the proportional options attempt to do the same as the previous options, but also maintain the image's aspect ratio. With fit width proportional, the image does cover the entire display area while maintaining its aspect ratio. Next, we have the stretch mode options, defaulting to scale, which will allow the image to stretch any way that is necessary to meet the demands of the expand mode and anchors. Tile mode is for images that are smaller than the size provided. So let's swap the image out for the Godot icon. Now the area is filled with tiles of the image. Undoing this change. Keep will ignore the expand mode and force the image to keep its original dimensions, and aligning it with the top left corner. Keep centered will also keep the original dimensions of the image but center it within its area. Keep aspect will allow the image to shrink or grow to fit inside the area. Switching back to ignore size, since the aspect ratios don't match, the image doesn't cover the entire screen. Keep aspect centered does the same, but also centers the image within the area. Keep aspect covered will resize the image, maintaining its aspect ratio, but ensure that it covers the entire area. So now the left and right edges of this image are being cropped. If you want to make sure the entire image is shown, you would probably use Keep Aspect or Keep Aspect Centered, and change the background color to fill the unused area. If you don't mind cropping the edges, using Keep Aspect Covered is also a good option for background images. The flip horizontal and flip vertical toggles will just flip the image, if that's something you wish to do. Let's press play and see how it looks. Remember that if we resize the game's window, the anchors will change, and affect how the image is drawn. And while the image will scale itself to fit the window, the title will only reposition itself, since it is being drawn to a specific font size. But we can change some settings to have more control over this behavior. From the main menu, select Project Settings. Then look under Display for Window. Here we can edit our viewport dimensions, changing the dimensions of the game window when we run the game, and also the dimensions of the blue rectangle in the editor. It's a good idea to set this to match the dimensions of your target publishing platform. The anchors haven't updated yet, but selecting or resizing the nodes will force them to update, and we can reset their anchor presets back to full rect. We can change whether or not the game opens in a window or full screen, but don't change this setting until after you have some way of exiting your game. You can also change where the window will be displayed on screen by setting the initial position type to absolute, then changing the screen coordinates for the window. And also which screen it will be displayed on by changing initial position type to center of other screen, then specifying the screen's index. These options will only work on an exported project, not when we run them in the editor. We can make the window borderless, and even change whether or not the window can be resized. This is one way we might fix the issue, but not a very flexible solution. The settings under Stretch provide better alternatives. We can change the stretch mode of the entire game from disabled to canvas items. Remember that all control nodes inherit from canvas item, so they will all be stretched with the window. Another setting exists for stretching the entire viewport, which will include the output of 3D cameras. When performing this stretching, we can change whether or not the game's display will keep its aspect ratio. Ignore will allow the game to squish and stretch any which way. Keep width or keep height will allow the game window to scale only as much as the width or height will allow. Expand will let the game's display grow and shrink, still maintaining the aspect ratio, but will expand to fill the entire window. Scale can be used to automatically reduce all canvas items to half size or up to 8 times their size. Useful for developing for platforms that have drastically different resolutions than your development machine. And scale mode can be set to integer to restrict the scaling to only dividing or multiplying by whole numbers. This is particularly useful for pixel art since it won't cause any pixel distortion, attempting to stretch or shrink pixels by fractional amounts. Handheld orientation settings are available for mobile development, to restrict to portrait, landscape, reversed, or use the device's sensor to determine the orientation. And VSync mode can be changed to determine how the machine's GPU is synchronized with the display refresh rate. These settings are not available when using the compatibility renderer and won't be applicable to anything we do in this project. We now have a background image for our title screen. In the next lesson, we'll add a start button. If you want to enroll in this or any of my courses, they're all available on my Patreon. You can also find them on Udemy and Skillshare. I have a Discord server for my followers and students to help each other out. All are linked below. I'll see you in the next video.